everyone. Thanks for coming out on this warm spring, kind of summerish day. I'm Ryan Shoney. I work at UW Extension here in Milwaukee County, and glad that we can put together this event for you all, and I know we'll be able to learn a lot from Janet.
Okay, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm very honored to speak with all of you. And a little disclaimer, my farm is rather large, but I want you to know that I consider a lot of things about farming size scale neutral. And I think what we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about today, is very relevant for any of you who are working in urban, peri-urban, or rural areas. And the topic is working in collaboration and how can farmers move towards an associative economy. And I've been living with this question for a number of years about what the future is really going to look like for our type of farming, no matter where you're farming, and the methodology that you're using. And I think, so what I'm going to be talking about is primarily my own experience and how things have come together and for me, and creating this picture of a very larger picture. And so the big vision that I have is that there would be regional food hub distribution centers that are owned by farmers. All right, so as we know, the CSA model has really established that kind of do everything, be everything, right, model, which is like really invaluable. And I am a CSA farmer, so I have really built my business off of some of the principles of having a CSA farm, which one of the key nuggets would be building community. All right, and so as I pondered what that really meant, and as I'm building a farm and really thinking about trying to build a community off of customers that sometimes you never meet, and I started feeling like I was, if you could just envision yourself as here's the farm, and then here's your customer base out here. I felt like I was way out here all the time and trying to pull people in back to the center. And I wanted to switch that imagination to work from the center and radiate outward. So that was a picture image that I've been carrying for a number of years. And it led me to thinking, who is my community? What is this community building supposed to be about? And we're in a very interesting time, I believe, because there's lots of shifts going on in the markets, especially in the CSA markets. There's lots of new farmers, which is a really good, positive thing. But the CSA market is declining, or it's plateaued. And there's a new demographic of people coming into being the market. So the traditional CSA demographic is an aging one. People who still like to cook. I think the millennial generation wants good food and cares, but I don't think they're cooks necessarily. And so we have raw product, right? And we're trying to move this raw product. So, you know, there's this big question, what's the future of CSAs? Because it's probably looking very much like they're not that sustainable in its current form. And I really believe, like, you know, nothing should stay the same, right? Like, there's no such thing as stasis. And that maybe our conversation needs to be CSA 2.0 or agriculture 2.0 now, as we enter sort of a new generation. I've been in this a long time, started my first CSA in 1994, and have had a few metamorphoses in those decades. But, you know, it's like, yeah, there's, I mean, even with the organic certification, you know, everybody knows organic, it's still growing as an industry, but there's concern because it's getting diluted. And now there's a new resurgence coming on regenerative agriculture that I'm sure all of you have heard about. So it is the time for change and to speak maybe a little differently about our farms and the way we work together. And so that's the premise of this conversation or presentation and hopefully conversation tonight. So community building is not only between the farm and your customers, right? We have built, I think it was really essential that the CSA movement created farm identity, transparency in the marketplace. So you knew your farmer, knew your food, but your community doesn't, it's not just about your customers, I believe. And so getting back to that picture I had of this, maybe it's like a bullseye circle with the farm being the center of the circle, the heart, and then your customers really being on the very peripheral of that circle. What's happening in between in that circle? And so I started going, I'm expending too much energy, like with this gesture, you know, doing this all the time with the CSA. And it's like, you know, I'm gonna like really focus on my community, my immediate community, which was a vibrant, diversified farm. And because the farm is where it's all happening, and it's where you're building your culture. And that community is your plants, your soil organisms, your animals, your employees. And I think that if we can create those vibrancies in what we're doing and in the work and becoming really excellent at what we're doing, it's going to radiate outward. I want happy, supportive customers. And when I know what I'm doing and I'm producing a product that is high quality and they know what they're getting, how it's grown, where it's coming from, I'm in good communication. I have happy customers. I deliver what I say I am, and if I can't, I'm in communication. Farmer to farmer relationships are also part of my community. And what does that mean? Well, we as organic farmers, and specifically, you know, organic farmers stuck together, we formed learning communities such as yours right here to share information, to show support. And it goes beyond that. It goes to sharing equipment or sharing land. It's creating product together. It's marketing together. Woo, you know, like maybe we have to give up our farm identity a little bit. Because I viewed our farm as an island. Very isolated from everything else because everything was my farm centric, which was really essential. It had its role, it has its role, and it's very essential, but it doesn't stop there. So if I offend people who are based in a philosophical principle of you can only sell what you produce and represent yourself, I apologize, because this isn't what that's about, this presentation. This presentation, and what I'm going to say, is about really breaking down some barriers. Because right now, what it feels to me, as a relatively large producer with very well-established markets in the Milwaukee area, that there's a great number of farmers, and we're all selling to the same people, the same markets, the same people. And there's a demand, and we're not necessarily capturing it entirely. And I'm going to give you examples of how working together just creates this exponential, like, energy field of being able to do more. And this might overwhelm you a little bit, what we have going on. And what I'm hoping for is that sometimes you have to stretch like a rubber band, right? To know where your limits are. And the important thing is to know where your limits are and come back, but you always want to hold a tension point. Because the tension points are the creative forces that allow you to continue finding the solutions to get through the barriers. If you relax too much, you know, you're going to miss out on something. So you always want to kind of have this contraction and expansion thing going on. And I'm really good at that because I expend myself often, and probably more so than I probably should. So I can speak to that. And as a result of combining this diversified community, you have something very unified and integrated and interconnected. And it's really, that's community building. Okay. This is just a view of our farm, but it's from a while ago, but it's still basically this integration of, you know, I just wanted to give you an idea of what it might have looked, what it looks like with the animals in the background. And the animals are a really key component. And it's a big piece of what's going to make farming sustainable is animals. So, and you could start with bees. But it's our source of fertility, you know, and they manage the lands for us. So they're very integrated. And those are our happy employees, some of them. Okay, Turtle Creek. That's my partner, Steve Tomlins. And we really, I mean, without the two of us, we wouldn't have had the growth and the diversity without both of us combining our skill sets to create what we have created over the years. So I like I said, I've had many more metamorphoses. And in 2010, I came on this particular piece of land, and there was nothing other than pasture and some remnant, you know, cash crop, conventional corn and soybean fields. And there was a neighbor who was managing, it's 100 acres. And there's a neighbor managing the pastures organically along with his land, adjacent lands. So we have the animals with the cooperation of the neighbor. And I built out the infrastructure to support a market farm for, you know, it's kind of like, oh, yeah, we'll shoot for 200 member CSA with very diversified market. One of my main goals wasn't to have a CSA only farm. I wanted a very diversified marketing base, which I think right now has saved my butt because I know a lot of people who are going out of business right now because they're CSA farmers. And they were at that 300 to 500 range of members, and those are the ones that are getting hit the hardest. So in 2014, we started doing a little bit more with animals. We brought in hogs, mainly to feed our employees. So we make sure that our employees get fed, that they get the food that we produce. And then we started expanding on that, and they are actually integrated into our system. And so when they so if we're growing perennial crops that just get too weedy, we put the pigs in, they clean up these rogue areas for us, clean it. And then we come back in and grow vegetables again. So they're moving around the farm all the time, every year. So 2 years ago, we took over all the land and have a herd of cattle on it now. And I'll talk about that because that's also a collaboration that I'll talk about later. So what I want to kind of focus on is like the evolution of what we did at Turtle Creek to leverage. So a little bit of this is about meeting growth. And those of you who are really trying to think like, I don't want to have a job other than farming, or I want an income in the winter, how we met those types of goals, and in the spirit of working with others. So where are the possibilities for growth? You know, these are questions for you to answer and to ponder and to think about. And as you see, the examples that I had will open up maybe some possibilities for you to think for yourself in your particular situations. What resources are underutilized? What are you sitting on that you're just not using it to its potential? Okay, could be a piece of, it could be infrastructure, like a big greenhouse, or a walk-in cooler that never gets filled, or a delivery truck that doesn't get filled and sits in the driveway too much. List these and find out where collaboration can occur. What are your markets? How can we do market expansion? I think we need that. If we had, the reason why I think the hubs aren't generating enough right now, like the little ones that are trying to, I'm not gonna like point them out, but it's because they're not focused on market, doing the marketing for the farmers. They just want to put up a venue for us to sell, right? And it's like, that's not going to help me. I need you to market for me. I need more market. We need more market than we can fill, you know, because there's lots of farmers that can fill it and your hubs would be more successful if you were moving product out for us that we didn't have to think about and try to market on our own. So, example, when we built the farm, we put up some infrastructure, and I put up infrastructure knowing that I was going to grow into it. So I didn't have to build another greenhouse in 2 years or 3 years or even 5 years. I put up one greenhouse. I use that greenhouse today, and I haven't had to put another one up yet. And it was underutilized in the first, it still is, I think. You know, it's a 20 by 72 foot greenhouse. We started selling plants. We started custom growing for other farms. We flipped our house already 2.5 times yesterday. Okay? So that's a lot of plants coming out of there and flipping, you know, just like generating product. Okay? So this is what I'm talking about, is that utilization and potential, maximizing potential. So that was an asset that we had that was underutilized, and I could use and I could leverage to create more income. And I have other vegetable growers. I grow vegetable seedlings for. I grow potted plants, you know, and a lot of them are just the same things we're growing, most of them predominantly. I pre-sell them, so I have money up front to help pay for it if it's an issue. I take them, I have on-farm site sale, and then I just take whatever's left to the farmer's market in Shorewood, because it's colder out there than it is at my farm. So the season's way much later, right? So by the time the market starts, people still haven't planted their tomatoes. And we're a month ahead of them. So that's a picture of the greenhouse very early on. So in about 2 weeks, it's full with our plants and everybody else's. So it's a very early shot, like probably the first 2 weeks of May, or March, excuse me. That's a picture of our plant sales that we just stage the plants outside the greenhouse. We don't have like little hoop houses we put plants in. We would just put them in hay wagons and run them in and out of the barn when it gets too cold. So it was very cold this year. We had to actually empty a wagon and put some plants back in the greenhouse wherever we could fit stuff. But we do have we have a garage that has a backup heater, so we could put those in. I have a picture of me. I should have put it on here. I never, in my life, this has ever happened, but I was watering plants outside right after that snowstorm. And I was like, this is the first time this has ever happened to me. I got to take a picture. And I forgot to put it up. But another big thing that we do is we look for resources. Like, who are our neighbor farmers for equipment, manures? This is all like, at first, you know, it's kind of like, what's going to help me? And then all of a sudden, you know, you realize that these collaborations are so integrated that we're helping each other, you know? And it doesn't seem that obvious at first until things start unfolding. And then all this other really cool stuff happens as a result of having these kinds of relationships. And so that manure spreader isn't ours, and either things are on barter or they are happy to give us the resources. They actually really like our organic farm, the conventional growers, because it's not a weedy field. And that is a huge issue with the conventional farmers. So if they go, you know, the conversation is us, like, when they find out you're a farmer and, yeah, we're that vegetable grower on Pinoa. Is that organic farm? Wow, yeah. Well, that's a pretty nice place, you know? And they always, you know, because it's about weeds. It's only about weeds, believe me. So if you have a weedy mess, you know, there's a definite attitude. So we've discovered that. Equipment. We have a remote field 4 miles away, 16-acre field. It's predominantly hay for the cattle, but we grow some vegetables, dryland vegetables. We do have some tanks a big, huge tank that in a crisis we'll go out and give it some water. We try to do dryland cropping there, but we have to get equipment. Sometimes we truck equipment in or drive it down the road. The flatbed truck is not ours, so we have this really good relationship with another vegetable grower in the area, Lot Puddle Farm. We share equipment all the time, you know, and he owns the potato equipment on this International with the bucket loader. There's a potato planter, and he did have a potato digger, but we didn't like it. And one of our other farmer partners, River Valley Ranch, they're vegetable growers too. They have a potato digger. So even just like everybody's swapping equipment. And I bet there's 4 farmers who use this equipment. And I'm going to talk more about the investment of this kind of stuff and the decisions, you know, about that and decisions we've made not to invest in some specialized equipment. And I just have some other, you know, like there's our delivery van. We do co-delivering sometimes too with Lot Puddle. And he rescues us when our van breaks down with his flatbed. We have what we call our land partnerships. We're growing 10 acres of oilseed pumpkin this year. And that's a whole nother project that I will talk more about too. And we discover it because we can't handle 10 acres of pumpkins on our land. We just don't have the land base, and nor do we have the rotation land for it. So we're working with another, what we call land partnership, with another farmer who owns a lot of land. It's organic. That's not his primary business, but he's, you know, grew up as a farmer and his heart is really there, and he's got infrastructure, equipment, and he's also a business partner. He's going to invest in some of the equipment that we need. We had applied for a Buy Local, Buy Wisconsin grant for this project, and we didn't get it because it was just too big, I think, of a project in scope for this particular grant that we came to find out. And I will talk more in detail about that because it has to do with the hub. So with this like idea of, you know, growth, and now we have like all this like cool stuff going on with all kinds of neighbors and other farmers and sharing equipment and growing their plants. I don't think I've ever had a year that I didn't grow vegetables for another CSA grower. Because especially people who are in their like 1 to 5 year range often are learning, because a lot of people go into CSA growing as the I guess their introduction to farming, and CSA growing is the graduate level of vegetable growing, in my opinion. So, and we're happy to do it, and so it's just been something that we've always incorporated. So, getting back to that, taking, you know, stock of your assets and underutilized assets. Oh, we have a walk-in cooler. Have markets, grew root crops. So for winter income, I remember many years ago, Richard DeWild from Harmony Valley Farms used to do a lot of the professional growers workshops at Michael Fields. That's where I was affiliated before Turtle Creek. And I always remembered that. Grow root crops is what he always, it was a big message he told farmers for winter income. And it always stuck with me. And so you can wash them, store them, and when you're ready to sell them, you just pull them out. And I'm like, I really don't want to grow in high tunnels in the cold and have to figure out how to wash them without a heated facility. And I sure the hell wasn't going to like bring them in my house. So, and I had grown in hoop houses for many years, and it's really, I mean, it's great. It just wasn't for me. And so we decided to bolster up the root crop production and stick them in our walk-in cooler that was underutilized all winter long. I mean, you have the expense of keeping it running, but we basically now fill two, 16 by 8 walk-in coolers with root crops. And we're just, maybe this week, maybe next week, we'll be done. We're still selling our products from last year. Okay? And we also did frozen fruit, which was illegal, but the restaurants really like that. We developed an online farm store. And we started developing what we called farm partners. And these were people that we knew or got to know because we wanted their product, right? But as a result of this sort of like working together, we're trading stuff all the time between this hub of growers, you know? And if you're not too philosophically like, I'm only going to produce what I need, the only way I was able to leverage my growth and get to a point of solvency was to sell other people's products as fast as I did. I'm not saying you can't do it without doing it, but you know, our farm was started in 2010 raw, and I came in as an employee for the landowner, and I told him, give me 3 to 5 years to make this farm break even and start making money. By year 4, 2014, I became business partner because the farm was on the road. Okay? And there were really key things that helped me get there. And one of them was this idea of not having to do everything, and really being transparent about it, you know, not trying to like say, this is my product, right? I was transparent about it, being honest. And as a result, these like synergies are going to happen, and you'll see the results of these synergies as I move on with this presentation. We also started developing value-added products as a way to create that winter income. Now, the one fallback on value-added product is that you're sitting on inventory a really long time, sometimes 18 months, because you got to grow it, right? Got to make whatever you're making, and then you got to sell this really large amount of product over time. So it could be, so if you're not making something weekly, you know, you're sitting on tens of thousands of dollars of product, right? And I'm going to address this too. Like, how do we get around these things when we're really small and we can't be sitting on tens of thousands of dollars of product as a small producer? What can we do to curtail these obstacles? And it's all about these relationships. And let me just keep going. I don't want to keep saying I'm going to talk about this later, but okay. So we started custom grazing. These are not our cattle. We didn't have 30 grand to buy a herd of cattle. So a farm that is very close to my heart, and I've been very integrated in this farm for a couple of decades, the Zinnecker farm in East Troy. They were a dairy farm and switched their model to a protein farm, raising cattle, and they outgrew their farm base, their land base, and needed land. If they wanted to expand their customer base, they needed more land. So they asked us if we wanted to custom raise cattle for them. And we're like, yeah, we'll do that, because we need to manage our land. And we really wanted to manage the whole land as part of really getting this land base more sustainable than it was. So we generate our fertility. We could help co-market because we had a huge customer base. So we talk about our farms in farm partnership on each other's websites. We co-market. We sell quarters, halves, whole animals. We sell cuts. And we don't have to have the big investment. We get a cut. We get paid per animal per day, get a monthly check. So that created income for us. Of course, we created the value-added products. And I'll disclose some of our income to you because I think you probably would love to know anyway. But I think it'd be helpful that we probably in the winter, to be able not to have to go to work and keep the lights on, we probably, depending on, kind of has a peak and then it kind of comes down, but about $8,000 a month in income, integrating all of this to create income. The goal for me is to always enter my year. Now, some money is CSA money, and I don't really separate it, but I go, okay, I need X amount of money in my bank account when I start the season. Right? So I always want to be at least at a certain threshold all the time in my bank account. And it might go like this a little bit, but it never goes like this. So I have these benchmarks that, I create so that I stay solvent and in case of emergencies, anything like that. And I'm not dipping in, I'm not robbing Peter to pay Paul, not using my CSA money to live on. That's really bad to do. Like, I know a lot of farms that do that, where they start selling CSA shares in the fall because they're having a hard time so they can get through the winter or finish their CSA and all of a sudden they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Don't ever do that. Figure out other ways to create income. So that's just a picture of our cattle in the winter. That's our deep pack. It's very valuable, that deep pack. That's a source of our fertility. We started with a really degraded farm, as a lot of farms are, because they get heavily mined. And if it would have been just a dairy farm, it probably would have been much better. But it was turned in from a dairy to a conventional farm, and there's highly erodible areas. So you start with a deficit, and then you want to grow vegetables, right? It's just it's one of the hardest things on land. So, that fertility and getting that balance is paramount. It's we put a big, huge investment into that fertility because we want to get to a point where 30 head of cattle might be okay, or 40 head of cattle to sustain us. We want to find the magic bullet. But right now we're working from a deficit and building it up. So we're bringing other manures in. So the cows come in up in the yard there, feed them there, they poop there, and it forms like a nice big deep pack. We bring pigs in, let the pigs stir it up a little bit. I like doing that. Sometimes Steve likes to just get the poop away and windrow it. But we've done it both ways, where we try to get the pigs to work it up for us. It depends on the breed, because some of them just don't have that nature to burrow and to dig. Some of the heritage breeds are better at that, composting. Otherwise, you have to trick them, like bury grain in the manure to get them to find it. Oops, going backwards. Okay. So did I capture all that? Let me just go back. I just want to make sure I got everything. Raising hogs, created value add practice online. Okay. We developed an online farm store, like I said, with our these farming partner products. And we deliver those to our CSA sites. So we're utilizing, these sites on the off season to maintain relationship, maintain product for customers. So there wasn't a big gap. So this really helped with retention, and the farm store really generates, it's pretty good. I wouldn't want to give it up, that's for sure. The farm partners that we've established relationship with. So we have the Zinnecker farm with the cattle. We have St. Bridget's Meadows, who's the supplier of beef, chicken, some pork when we don't have enough, eggs, and we co-market products. They buy our products, we sell their products. They're like, how can we sell more hogs? Right now we're working on some arrangement where they can raise some of the feeder hogs for us on their farm so that we can keep expanding our markets. And so these relationships just start building off of one another when you start doing these things. And we buy a lot of product from them, so they're really happy. This relationship's really strong. It's needed. They value it. We value them. They have my farm store is on a site called Farm Match. Has anyone heard of Farm Match? Well, it's a farmer-friendly site. Doesn't cost the farmer anything. It's a really kludgy site, but Max, who developed this site, wanted to do this for farmers so they wouldn't have the overhead of having their own online farm store, especially when you're starting, because if you like we have Small Farm Central as our host or platform, and if we use their online farm services, right away it would have cost us just $150 a month just to have it. And we didn't know, like, gosh, I don't want to spend $150 and I don't even know how much I'm going to sell. And Farm Match popped up. It was brand new. I was one of their first few. They had a handful of people that they piloted it with, and so we've used it. It's not great because it's not on your website. You have to go. But the really cool thing about Max is, I come to find out that he delivers product to one of my sites, my CSA sites. So we share a site. He brings the St. Bridget's products down because he's selling their products too. He's selling their raw milk to Illinois. So there's this really cool synergy that starts to be created, amongst having these kind of partnerships. Like I said before, you don't feel like you have to do everything yourself. Let someone who's like, that's their specialty do it. For instance, we have Eigel Farms, who is the organic potato grower in Wisconsin. They grow our potatoes for them. Now, and this is going on for years, working with Eagles. And as a result of that, Brad calls me and says, Janet, can you help me find some market? You know, he wanted to find newer markets. I mean, the Whole Foods market's fine, but it has its drawbacks, because every time I talk to him, he just complains about Whole Foods. But so I'm like, sell to some of the customers he wanted to penetrate their markets. So we handle potatoes for him. We're like, yeah, bring Peter Sandroni's potatoes for La Miranda. We'll wash them, because he won't start washing potatoes until he harvests them all. And that's like a month to 6 weeks of harvesting. Send them dirty. We'll wash them for Peter and get them to Peter until you can ship them to Peter clean and bypass us. We do the same thing for Good Harvest Market. So there's all this like really cool stuff that starts occurring, right? And this is all as extra income and opportunity.
Are you charging anyone?
Yeah, we charge, and he's perfectly happy to give us a handling fee. And then when it all levels out, we don't do that anymore, and we just buy our own and sell our own Eagle potatoes. And the reason why we do that is because we got to a scale where it didn't make sense growing our own potatoes, because once you get to a certain scale, it takes special equipment. And it was like, do we really want to invest in the equipment? Plus, we sell 10,000 pounds of potatoes a year. We can't even conceive of where we would put 10,000 pounds of potatoes, right? We would need to build a building to store potatoes. But I can sell them. I can move potatoes. So that's a leverage point. Like, how can I leverage income by helping Eagles move potatoes and us to create some additional income and not have to have the investment into infrastructure I really don't need if I don't need it. Okay? So custom growing for other farms. Like I said, we grow vegetables for other farms. This year we have lot fodder. He's shifting his model big time. He lost most of his CSA members, and he didn't have strong enough other markets to sustain it. He's going into organic corn production because corn's priced really high this year, and he asked us, can we grow vegetables? He's got a whole food CSA. We're like, sure, we'll grow that. Can you grow us, because it's probably easy and you got a lot of land, cabbage, because we make sauerkraut and we need lots of cabbage, and we already have more brassicas on our land than we want. So he's going to grow our cabbage for us. So the other thing is, there's other radical root. The same situation. They just dropped significantly in CSA, dropped some of their Chicago markets. They're in a peri-urban area. So they have a farm store that does very well, and they buy tons of products from us. Illinois people love Wisconsin products. They love anything that has Wisconsin on it. They're our biggest buyer of our value-added products. They buy cases a month. I take it once a month. I deliver tomato puree and sauerkraut, and they're definitely, hands down, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times bigger buyer than any of our other accounts. We have a beekeeper. That's just like really cool thing, I think, because we don't have to keep the bees and have another thing to take care of. And he comes and puts bees. This year we're going to have another like the other kind of beekeeper on our remote field. So we'll have 200 hives on one field, and then like Dan keeps probably 15 hives at our primary land base. And the other guy is a neighbor who we also do like equipment trades, mechanical trades. Yeah, they do custom work when we didn't have a bigger tractor. We now do have a bigger tractor, but when we didn't, they did some of our more heavy work for us. And they, yeah, so one of the brothers does this commercial beekeeping and will summer his bees on that property. We have a new farm partnership that was a goal of mine a few years ago, is to create a one label shared product. Okay? And it was called the Tomato Project. And at the inception of that was Peter Sandroni from La Miranda said, can't you guys like grow some tomatoes for me year round, or like supply me in tomatoes year round? You know, it's like some products that I, you know, would just be have something year round. And so we settled on tomatoes, tomato product. And it turned out that it's tomato puree, because the co-packer we use, the only type of tomatoes they can process is more like a juice rather than a sauce. And so he uses it for his Bloody Mary mix. And I tried for years to try to get other farms involved, and nobody would do it. Nobody would do it, mainly because a lot of the farms that service some of the same markets are near the lake, and it's just like tomatoes are just so hard here near the lake. So, so anyway, when the market kind of dips, you know, and there's like the struggle going on, farmers become way more receptive to working cooperatively. And Prairie Wind was already producing tomatoes for processing, so it wasn't like a big leap for them. Like I was like going, hey guys, just think about it. We need a minimum of 2,000 pounds. And for someone to hear 2,000 pounds is like visually or mentally like, oh, 2,000 pounds. It seems like, you know, that's a ton, you know? And it's like, well, just think about it. It's 200 5/9 boxes. You could do like if we divided that up, you know, if we just made the minimum, is it conceivable? Like 10 boxes, 20 boxes? Like if you break it down like that, and then they were starting to go, yeah, that sounds more reasonable, but nobody still bit, all right? And I'll talk more about that, the outcomes. And the most important thing about this is the transparency. That's key in moving forward and into different types of markets. And, you know, like I said, we're doing this oilseed project, and that's a whole different ball game. And our buyers can only get stuff from China. There's one farm in the United States that's producing oilseed pumpkin. So any nutraceutical company, which there are 3 in Wisconsin, are clamoring for product because there's no transparency when you get something from China. And they're dealing with health products, right? So, and if they are doing high-end, you know, products, they want high-end resource, you know, they want a high-end product to make their product with. So, transparency is really important when you do this stuff. You're always talking, you're always I promote other people. It's not about me. It's about who I'm working with and how did I get here, you know? And so that's going to be really important. So for instance, I'll give you an example of this, because this is really kind of cool, but people might cringe a little bit because it just defies some of the rules that we've been led to believe or that we follow, maybe. At the farmers market we do the Shorewood market. And they started on, everyone has the idea, like, we don't want a lot of vendors. Or we want a lot of vendors, but we don't want, like, the same vendors. Especially, like, lots of vegetable vendors. Because once you have lots of vegetable vendors, what happens? What? Yes. Yes. And then our farm has really high overhead. I can't do a market and bring $500 home. I can't do it. I'm too big. I gotta come back home with at least $2,000 because of my overhead. It works for the small growers because the $500 is like big money probably, right? And it's probably a lot easier to service a market when you're a small vendor. But when you're a big, and so that was like, they always checked in. How are you doing? And I'm like, I'm really happy. This market's great. It's really, really good. And they allowed us to sell Michigan fruit. And everything, it's labeled. We're very careful that people know that we are not growing this. And they did a survey this year because it's a relatively young market, and all new markets start out really gangbusters and they're really good. And it's just like, okay, the day's going to come, and that's okay, but it's going to come. And of course, all the customers they want more for the price drops. And our prices aren't inflated. They are not inflated at all. And we can sell volume there, so we can be really reasonably priced. And customers wanted more vendors, and they want that, like, appeal, like you walk in and it's just the vegetables everywhere, like that's what they want. And so after they checked in with us and said, how do you feel about it? And I said, well, it's really, you're between a rock and a hard spot, Of course I don't want any other vendors here. Some people think, oh, competition's good, but there's a balance. You can't just, like, saturate your limited foot traffic with a bunch of vendors and think that all these people are going to come because you have a big market. The growth has to happen really carefully and deliberately. And I said, do what you need to do. It's the reality. You got to keep everybody happy. And I had this long conversation. They called back 2 hours later and said, we decided we don't want to bring any more vegetable vendors. In fact, we're going to give you an extra stall so you can have a bigger presence and you can sell other people's produce. You can sell other people's produce. We can take produce now, overflow from people like, the farms who we're working with, whoever, like if there's stuff that we don't have or want to bolster this up with, we can display it. And we're going to have that booth, that extra stall is going to be a banner, our farm partners. It's going to educate people on the benefit of that type of selling. So it's going to be really apparent. It's going to be somewhat separated. It's going to be identified as such. It's going to have their logos. on the banner, and it's going to be our farm partners. So just like if they went into Outpost and bought produce, right? Yeah.
I just have a question about, you mentioned you charge a handling fee when you're selling other people's products at the market. Are you buying that out?
Yeah, I buy it outright. I buy wholesale and market retail. Yep, definitely. But, you know, people are happy on it. Well, once you get to size and scale, you know, that those types of markets are great. I mean, we need a certain amount, a percentage of retail sales for our size and scale. You know, we're not big enough to be a completely wholesale farmer. And the Michigan growers, even the berry growers in Michigan, they're in large, there's really big farms that all they do is like sell their stuff wholesale or to processors. And then you have the smaller family-owned fruit farms that are predominantly selling their fruit in the Chicago market. And that's where we get our fruit, are from those farmers. And sometimes, you know, if we get conventional fruit, sometimes they're wheeling and dealing, you know, and bringing us farm berries from their neighbors or the big growers. But we always know where it's coming from. They're really transparent about it. And then we mark it up, you know, and we mark it up to really what the market's going to bear for us. So you know, it's really nominal. But I go to Chicago, or not Chicago, the northern suburbs, and so I can pick up on my way. So I piggyback. I do a lot of things down there to make my trip worthwhile. I go to Radical Root. You know, I go pick up my berries. I go deliver my CSA boxes, you know, so I'm really making use of that route and utilizing it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about shared risk, shared reward concept. This is another nugget. I talked about the nugget of community building. Okay. And shared risk, shared reward, right? That's how this economic piece of the CSA works, right? People are paying up front for promise, sharing in the risk, and we're taking that into other products. Our oil seed, we're growing the with a processor. They'll give us money up front for production. They'll give us money up front for processing, right? So we can stay operating, and remember that big $10,000s of dollars of inventory, right? They're going to pay for it. They're going to help pay for it. They're going to help generate that. So we're taking some of these nuggets and applying it to other customers.
How do you fund your processing partners?
The Con Oils is the buyer, our primary buyer right now. And that was through my relationship with Michael Fields Connections. The founder of Michael Fields made a connection to the owner of Con Oils and then to the Biodynamic Association. And it was on the board of the Biodynamic Association, and she wanted to incorporate more biodynamic product into her products. So they wanted to visit a farm, and they came out to my farm, and we hit it off, and we started like, what can we do? What can we do together? And so we have 2 products this year. One is the oilseed pumpkin, and one is hemp. We're going to grow grain hemp, and they're going to be the buyers of that, and we're growing CBD hemp. So we're getting into these other kinds of markets now. And the hub, the oilseed hub, is we're creating a hub to have these contracts of the shared risk, shared reward between the farmer to the hub and the hub to the buyer. And we'll manage that. The hub will be hopefully a place where we have shared equipment. We can also do the oil pressing if they don't want to sell their product to the processor. So there'll be services. We'll have a best management practice piece where we're actually helping to educate people how to grow these crops and products. So anyway, we met. This is just the numbers on where we landed with this tomato project. We were doing it all ourselves. You could see that our goals increased as we got more used to it. It became easier to do. We got our timing down, our staging down. When we added a farm, we thought, okay, we're going to double. Well, no, look at how much we increased. And it was no more work for either one of our firms. And I think this is really important, this data here. By combining your effort, you just increased, your production. This is like what, 2.5 times more than if we were doing it alone. Not double, and it was a bad tomato year last year, okay? So trying to create synergy and create more product together is really makes sense. And it's really simply economics. We just divided product. We created enough product to supply Peter and tomatoes, puree for Bloody Marys at Engine Company for a full year. We also added a restaurant, Birch and Butcher, and we also did quarts for retail. We're in 5 stores, and we're almost out of that product though, and the other farm had enough to distribute to their 250, 300 members CSA. Okay, so wrapping it up, what can you do? Take inventory, identify your underutilized assets, identify your barriers. What are they? Are they just like money, land, infrastructure? Identify what you do best, what you like doing the best, and what you're really good at. Identify your community of farms and get together and start talking. And learn to work together, most importantly, because it's really tough when you put humans together. Okay, so that's it.
Just a few minutes if you have questions that you want to ask Janet. And I think part of this, why we're here this evening, is to try to build collaboration and to get to know one another and see where the gaps are and see where the opportunities are to work together and be intentional about that. And so I just want to get the conversation at least going. I know it's not going to end here, but I want to continue building this group of farmers and learners as a community. And one of the things that hopefully in the next week and a half, we're going to launch a listserv so that you can send an email out to all of the folks that are in this group and a number of other folks that are doing small scale beginning farming. So if you want to look for somebody to go in on purchasing a different, if it's equipment or products or whatever it is, whatever collaboration, you'll be able to do that. We have a listserv capacity that will be launching soon, and we'll keep you informed of that. Hopefully have everybody's email address. So with that being said, any questions for Janet or for the rest of the room for that matter?
You did talk about value added a bit, but you had said something about catering to those individuals in the millennials who don't like to cook. And I was wondering if there was anything else you wanted to say about that.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, yeah. I think that's why part of why we're expanding into some other areas is because of the delicacy of fresh produce and direct sales with produce. No, well, we don't really go after the restaurant thing too much. I mean, there's a couple of restaurants we deal with, maybe a small handful, and they're predominantly the restaurants that buy a lot from us. So we service, we do direct to grocery stores too. So a big piece of our market is like selling to Outpost and Good Harvest Market in particular too. Those are two really big accounts for us. So the millennial thing, yeah, like how do you sell them a box of produce, right? That they have to deal with and manage. And so I just feel like the CSA, I'd like to think that it's not going to, maybe it's just a certain amount of people can sustain it fine, with the few people that want to do CSA. And it feels like I'm always chasing that market, like change, and all the farmers are doing that. Like they're offering all these different options, and chasing it and trying to figure it out. And I feel like if we give it up, that's okay. But I want to learn. It's like lessons learned. What are the nuggets? And I keep going, what are the nuggets about the CSA? It's that shared risk, shared reward. It's the building of community and collaboration. It's the associative economics, really. And how can we apply it to new markets and really own that piece of the supply chain? We want to own the supply. The farmers should. It's like, why the hell don't farmers own the supply chain? What did they do? They gave all their power away. Just threw it out the door, because who's making all the money, right? So it's like, and when you talk to people, like really, like farmers who've been doing this, I mean, people are saying that. We gotta own more of the supply chain, and that's why this vision of having the regional supply chain that's owned by the farmers. We own it. So you can be a contributor and own a piece of it, but the farmers have a piece of that. And I guess cooperatives were set up that way, and there are models out there, but the ones who pretty much do it are either really isolated, like Organic Valley. It's very isolated, but there's a high concentration of growers. So the vegetable scene, the vegetable pool has always been a little sleepy, but they're doing really cool things now. They're like Harmony Valley has their distribution dock that they opened up now to farmers, so the farmers can get their products on trucks going to the Twin Cities, and they get enough volume to be able to do it because there's enough growers, right? So the other way it works is like a lot of either commodity crops or like crops that need to be processed. People are always working together like that. For some reason, the vegetable growers are just really doing it all, trying to do it all themselves. And so I'm just looking at not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but what are the nuggets? What are the lessons learned? What can we take that are really like forward-thinking concepts and apply them in a new way? You know, that's what we have to be, innovators and try new things and risk takers. And farmers are the biggest risk takers in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And they hold all the risk, which isn't right. Did I answer your question okay?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think educating people how to cook or how to talk, you know, like and these things might be cyclic. You know, if people, like with this whole romaine thing, like everyone wants to chop vegetables. And I think there should be chopping going on in this city with all the vegetables that we have, you know, but everybody's going to get scared again of eating romaine lettuce. I'm like, shit, I just grew a whole bunch of romaine lettuce. I hope I can sell it. But, you know, I mean, these things come and go and people forget, but really, like, we have to know our customers and what they want. And CSAs are benevolent dictators, right? I don't think they really know anymore what their customers want.
So with that, again, thanks to Janet for coming up and sharing all of her wisdom and knowledge with us. All right, thanks everyone. Make sure you got your name down on this sign-in sheet. If you didn't already, grab some more food. And if you have any questions, let me know.